Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the committee, especially knowing that it's constituency week. So thank you for taking the time for that. I know how important that is to you. I'm here on behalf of Albertans and Canadians who are struggling with severe financial pressures. They're increasingly desperate because they're facing a cost of living crisis not seen in decades. Over the last 2 years, inflation and high interest rates have driven up prices on everything from food to gas to housing, things that Albertans rely on every single day. Families are being forced to make tough choices just to put food on the table. Businesses are having to make sacrifices to keep the lights on. Social services are under intense strain as more and more people reach out for help, many for the first time in their lives. Albertans and all Canadians need common sense, compassion, and responsible government to prevail. That's why I'm urging you today to heed the calls of Canadians across the country and suspend the increase in the carbon tax on April 1st. The carbon tax has contributed to and worsened Canadian stress and financial pain. Despite the federal government's claims that Canadians benefit from rebates, the carbon tax on a net basis will cost Albertans more than $900 this year if the tax is implemented. The federal government's own parliamentary budget officer has also said that the cost to each Albertan will more than triple in the next 6 years to a staggering expense of $2,700 net by 2030 to 2031. This isn't just reckless, it's immoral, and it's inhumane. And the added pressure will ruin countless lives, futures, and dreams. It's a weight that Canadians can't bear. And that's why Alberta has been calling on the federal government to eliminate the carbon tax since 2019. Let me repeat what I've said many times before. We understand the importance of achieving carbon neutrality, and we can manage it together as a nation without punishing everyday Albertans. We've demonstrated as much in Alberta, where we are making significant strides towards reducing emissions. And we're doing it without compromising jobs and hurting the industries that have created so much wealth and prosperity for our country, and which will continue to do so if the federal government would just let them. Our province has a long history of climate action, with more than 2 decades of programs and policies that have led emissions reductions and inspired other jurisdictions to follow our lead. Provinces and territories must be able to create emissions reduction plans that reflect their distinct needs and priorities. Alberta's industries are steadily lowering emissions with new technology and investment, even as they compete with foreign suppliers who ignore the need to improve their own performance. And things don't have to be this way. We can effectively reduce emissions without punishing Canadians for trying to stay warm or drive to work or school or a medical appointment. Alberta's already doing it through our carbon trading market. It's the technology innovation and emissions reduction regulation, just launched actually on NGX this month, and through our emissions reduction and energy development plan, which I released last April. The only thing the federal carbon tax is achieving is higher costs. And in fact, Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault did say it would take until 2060 for it to have an impact. As of April 1st, Albertans will pay around 35 cents in federal taxes for every litre of fuel, along with the carbon tax that also includes the federal excise tax and the GST, which is a tax on tax. The price of natural gas, which Albertans rely on, will also be affected by the carbon tax increase. The carbon tax increase on natural gas is going up to $4.09 a gigajoule, which is more than double the base price of natural gas, which today stands at about $1.72 a gigajoule. The so-called solutions the federal government is to increase the carbon tax on something that is life or death for Albertans in the extreme cold of winter. And I will say that is, again, inhumane. It begs the question, how far will the federal government go to make life even more difficult and expensive when so many Canadians are already struggling? Alberta municipalities, schools, and healthcare providers are telling us that they need to make cuts and borrow from elsewhere in their budgets just to accommodate the upcoming carbon tax increase. And yet we hear repeatedly that affordability remains a top federal priority. So I'm calling on the federal government to match words with actions. This means working with the provinces to ease Canadians' burdens and strengthen the Canadian economy. Serious challenges like affordability and emissions demand serious responses, and an increased federal carbon tax is nothing of the sort. And Canadians don't want it. You only need to look across the country to see premiers across party lines, 7 of us, and the people they represent stand up against it. If the federal government wants to protect Canadians' quality of life, it should step up and cancel the carbon tax increase immediately. At the very least, the federal government should apply policy equally across the country. We've heard the Quebec representative say several times that Quebec does not pay the fuel tax. And we also would like to see an exemption on all forms of home heating, not just ones that are centered in Atlantic Canada and on a particular type of fuel. It must do this for the sake of fairness for all Canadians. The people of this country deserve nothing less. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Premier Smith. We'll start